Okay, thank you very much for that introduction and for having me here today. I've done a few iterations of this talk, and it's always generated really good discussion at the end. So I encourage you to have any questions ready if you want to talk either in the talk or after in one-on-one sessions. And I also restructured this talk because I realized that many of the folks in the mentorship stream are not just maybe new entrants like breaking into tech, but might be transitioning from previous careers or even different lines of tech. So I hope that my suggestions here will be able to speak to all levels of experiences and different career paths. Okay, so um, before I get into it, this is what I'm hoping to be covering today. I'll first talk about a motivation for why even bother writing online. Um, then we'll dive into personal examples that I've used and how I've used writing online to network more effectively and interview in a less stressful way. And then we'll turn to, okay, how do we actually do this? What does a writing strategy look like for those of us who don't like to write, who have a fear of writing, or who maybe just like find it very stressful to write, don't have time to write? We'll cover all those scenarios. And then towards the end, we'll talk about some of the last mile features that we often neglect when we are writing a piece to publish online to share with other people. All right. So a bit about me. This is my journey on the left. I did a data science boot camp way back in 2019. And then I graduated into the COVID job market. It was like perfectly timed. I think it was March or April 2020. And I was very fortunate to land at Towards Data Science, which some of you might know is as a Medium publication for data science, data engineering, machine learning articles. And after that, I moved to a sales engineer role at Plotly. See on the right here. This was one of the few times I met my colleagues in person because by that point, so many of us had gone remote permanently. I took a short break for graduate school last year, but over the year and a half that I've been at school and now working, I've turned to freelance consulting and technical writing for a variety of companies in data engineering and data science. You might recognize some of them. They include Dagster, the orchestration tool, Plotly, my old employer, Datafold, data diffing with DPT, and a few others that I can't name right now. Some of my work has been published online. For example, I wrote this 10-part series for Dagster on Python guide specifically for the data engineer to help onboard them if they're coming from other languages or other tools. Okay, so let's jump into it. Why write online? I think most people find it really hard to get started. I personally do as well. I do not have an active blog. I don't have a Substack. I don't advocate having one. I just have a few really good pieces online that helped me get started. I think actually I only have one piece that I had online like 4 years ago to launch my career. And that's really all you need. You don't need like to be an influencer on LinkedIn or do anything more involved than that. But let me share an anecdote from my Towards Data Science days. When I was working at Towards Data Science, part of my job required vetting article submissions. And to do that, we used a variety of factors. For example, it was not just whether your article was good. It was, does the data set that you use respect, open source rules? Is it a proprietary data set we need to get permissions for? Are your visuals engaging and catchy? Do they make sense? But we also assess whether the authors have any education or professional credibility. And one time when I was going back and forth with a colleague on, this article seems good, but I'm really not sure, and I can't seem to find info about this author online. She made this comment: "This author barely seems to exist." And I thought that was a perfect description for what you don't want to happen. Many times we encountered LinkedIn profiles that look like this. It's not public to a stranger. There's barely any information even in the title of what they do. And these authors were required to link their profiles in their submissions form. So there was not much thought as to, what we were going to see when we clicked on that link. And it probably hurts a lot of people's professional credibilities to leave LinkedIn profiles like that. I follow this tech influencer. You could call, I'm sure many of you have heard of him too, Patrick McKenzie, who previously worked for Stripe. And he is one of the internet's most prolific writers, and is an example of how a software engineer can be a really good writer in a way that also creates a lot of career leverage. I couldn't find the exact tweet that I saw, which made me think about putting a talk together in the first place, but he talked about how writing online serves as one of the biggest ROI you can have for your career. There's a pretty good chance that you will be Googled before your interview, or even in a networking setting, someone will look you up after a conference they've met you at. They want to learn more about you. And having some sort of polished work online is a great way to signal your technical chops. It also indicates that you're conscientious, that you've made an effort to present yourself professionally to your peers. And I think this is something that many of us in the industry underestimate. We focus too much on the GitHub repos, the Git commits, and not about everything that comes alongside that. So I'm going to show you how this works to supercharge your networking and interviewing before I tell you how to do it. I'm trying to take my own advice here in that, I want to show you the good stuff up front before I get into the meat of like how you actually get it done. Okay, so networking. Networking is a very scary word. Networking is really hard, and it's quite frankly even harder online. So when I graduated into the COVID job market, all the in-person conferences, that all like disappeared, right? And as a fresh grad, it's like, how am I going to meet connections who will be able to refer me to vanishing job opportunities? So it made me think about what a credible strategy would look like. And so my advice here would really apply to both in-person and online situations. It's for both, because the problem of networking is establishing trust with someone you've just met, right? And it's the same whether you meet them at a conference for the first time, and you try to give yourself give them a 30-second pitch on who you are and why you're great to talk to and why they should follow up with you. And it's even more true when you're sending out maybe tens of LinkedIn requests every day, trying to reach someone at a company that you're applying for, or even just to learn more about their career path and get some advice and mentorship on like what you should do next. So you can think of your writing as doing two things. It serves as an icebreaker, and it also serves as a credible signal of what you can do. So I found this funny image that really plays to both of these writing features, right? Many of us suffer from imposter syndrome. That's especially true if we're trying to move into a new industry or a new role for the first time. And it's kind of a stretch to say, oh, you know what? I've done this program. That means that I can be a data scientist. But writing can help you make that jump a bit more credibly, right? And it also serves as a, hey, like I've done something. This is something we can talk about right now. We don't have to just make small talk about the weather and then move on. So I want to share a few examples of what I mean as I think a lot of these how to network online or in-person articles or advice columns you see out there, they don't really get to like, how does that actually work? So I'm going to show you like screenshots from my own personal life because I feel like that might be really helpful. So oftentimes you can say, like, imagine you're sending an email or you're sending like a LinkedIn request or a Twitter DM. And I've done like all three to land like gigs. You could say, hi, I'm interested in a 15-minute chat with you about your experience at, say, Microsoft. That's not super interesting. If people get a lot of these requests every day, they're getting a lot of spam and they're likely to just like, you know what, I'm busy. Why should I give this person the time of day? Even worse, I find that the advice to go around asking people for referrals um, is like people have to stake their reputation to refer you internally for positions. That's a pretty big ask if they don't know you very well. So what I found is that if you include a link to what you've done, saying, hey, I actually just worked on this great project. Doesn't matter if it was a side project or a real project you did like at a company. You say, I built this model to improve this outcome, and you can check it out online here if you like. Oftentimes people will say, okay, well, there's a link. I'll click on it and see what's up. They'll still have to assess you to see whether you're credible, but it lends more organically to a follow-up interaction. They could say, hey, that's really cool, but I'm not in that industry. I don't think I would be much help. That's totally possible as an outcome. But they could also say, oh, that's really cool. Here's my Calendly. Feel free to book a call and we can discuss more of your interests or how I can help you. Here are also two more examples of how networking is easier when you have proof of work. These are, as you can see by the timestamps, this is right when COVID hit. So on the left, it was an email that I sent to a recruiter right after I spoke with them at an online conference. So it says TML's booth. It was an online conference by that point. And I think it was one of those like Zoom style conversations where they just pair you up randomly with people. And I just quickly got the name and I was like, okay, I'll follow up with them. Having something published already helped me craft a more substantive email to follow up. I could say, I recently did this. This is my proof of work. Is there anyone I could talk to at your company to discuss more opportunities? Similar example on the right. I think I was following it with a person at Shopify. Yeah, so you can fit a lot into those LinkedIn. I think it's like 300 character limits for a cold outreach note. And then just leave it for the other person to take a look at. One of the articles, so that same article that I've linked now multiple times, again, like I'm not lying when I said I only hit one article. This was an article I did for the bootcamp that I was in. And I wrote the article, I tagged the organization that we had done our co-op with, and they were really helpful in retweeting and providing some commentary, which, helps to provide some level of social proof that, Elliot isn't this totally random person who's like, doesn't know what he's talking about. This is validated by a third-party organization, and as well as the staff at that organization. Yeah, and also I don't tweet, so like this is the extent of all the tweeting that happens for me. All right, so writing is also really helpful for interviewing, and I boiled it down to like 3 reasons. Writing helps you discuss what really matters. I found this on LinkedIn recently, and I thought it was just like the perfect encapsulation of what I mean by this. So this person says, give this answer to the question, how can you evaluate a candidate's domain knowledge during data research interviews? So notice that towards the end, they talk about how they grill candidates on detailing the tools, data sources, and libraries they employed and their reasons for doing so. This is to help determine whether the candidate truly grasped the underlying concepts that they've engaged with. So it's not merely about, did you ship a project, but did you understand why you picked certain tools? What were the constraints that you had to deal with along the way? And do you understand maybe the alternative paths that you could take? And oftentimes during an interview, these interviewers will start drilling down to try to get a sense of like, did you really do this? Do you really understand this? It's not just about how shiny your web application looks or how great it sounds on paper, but what knowledge you actually have. And so writing forces you to understand the entire code base that you've done, the methodological assumptions, the modeling trade-offs, and so on. It's also really great interview prep because once you have this down on paper, in whether it's online or internally somewhere, you can reference it quickly right before an interview, which is really helpful when there's a huge gap between, say, your last substantive project and your next role. And this has definitely saved me many times because over the course of your career, you're probably not going to be working on amazing projects every week. There'll be a handful of projects that where you feel like you've really impacted the company's bottom line. You've had a significant contribution to the code base, and that's something that is a great example of your skill set. So having it down helps you not forget all the incredible things that you did until that point. A question that I often get is, how do you deal with team projects and your own individual contributions? I think that writing online helps you sidestep the entire question, because if you have to write about a project, you have to know all the moving pieces, right? Whether you wrote the code for that or you didn't, you need to understand how it all fits together. And that's especially true in, say, data engineering or data science, where you can't just write about like the model that you iterated on, but about what databases you pulled it into, what was your ETL framework, what was the front end UI you guys used for it, whether it was a notebook or a web application like Dash. So obviously you don't want to lie about your personal contributions to a project, but being able to talk intelligently about all the different areas and say, hey, if you want to ask me about this feature, I actually know where this is in the code base and I can talk about it. And demonstrating that signal of you're not just good at one thing, but like you understand a project holistically. All right, so, one more thing about interviewing. Writing makes it easy to follow up on job interviews in a meaningful way. Oftentimes people will say, oh, after you've had an interview, you should follow up with the recruiter or whoever you talk to, right? I'm not sure how useful that advice is, but generally it's probably safer to err on the side of like being polite and being proactive. But just following up in an interview by saying, thank you for your time isn't really that significant. It doesn't really help you stand out when they're having candidates that are quite close together. You could follow up more meaningfully if you say, hey, I enjoyed our conversation and I wanted to share some links to the 2 projects that we discussed on the call. So here I add the 2 projects. And again, both of these projects I did during my bootcamp. So it doesn't have to be something crazy that you're doing from scratch. All right, so let's now talk about a writing strategy for non-writers. You don't have to love writing to write one great article, and I'm pretty adamant about this. You only need one article. You don't need a blog, and you don't need a Substack. You can just write that one article and never publish again. That's probably fine. And so the strategy that I've come up with hopefully will help simplify the process for you. So it proceeds in 3 parts. You have your documentation, you have a writing structure, and then you have some stuff at the end on making sure it's really tight and punchy. So, so the project that I talked about, the one article that I keep referencing was this project that we did on using very simple machine learning methods to identify instances of trade fraud in a real trade data set. So on the left, this was my group that we were assigned at to work on this project in conjunction with a think tank in the States. And on the right was the outcome of the project in which I took leadership of writing up the project. And we were fortunate in that although no one else on the team were writers, we took extensive notes. I think we had more than 20 pages of documentation on every single step of the way, from data cleaning to data processing to how we pull data into out of Parquet files, how we cleaned very, very messy trade data with foreign language that none of us spoke, Russian. and how we dealt with, false positives and things like that. So when it came time to write, almost 3 months later, I could refer back to that document and proceed section by section to write cleaner copy on what we did for every single step of the way. So it's much easier to write up 1,000-word blog post or even something shorter in this way, because you will absolutely forget everything by the time a project ends. So document everything if you can, even if you think it was a really trivial decision at the time. The second way to do this is to proceed with a structure. You don't have to reinvent the wheel for a lot of writing, and it is okay to be really boring. So if you think about research articles, they often have, they have the abstract, they have keywords, they have the intro, they talk about data collection, feature engineering, then there's stuff about methodology, and then like future directions for further research, right? I advise doing the exact same thing. So you don't have to follow my suggested structure here. This is what I found to be helpful and which covered all my bases in an article. And if any of you have used libraries like Cookie Cutter, where you pip install it into your data science project and it builds out all your files and folder structures so you can get to work right away. Think about this as that, but for your writing projects. So you copy paste this into your Word doc, make these all headers, and then you just get to work. 300 words for each section, and then you're done. I want to highlight, though, I put here that methodology is optional. I think that as ChatGPT becomes a better way to, I guess, create writing fast, good writing fast, this part is going to be more and more critical for writing, any sort of writing, because it demonstrates a sense of the context in which you built a project, whether that was a side project or within a large organization where you had to talk about like competing resources, constraints, time, things like that. The methodology section is where you can really expand into context sensitive information that is really interesting to recruiters and future employers, right? There's like many tools right now that can run machine learning models on your data intelligently, automatically, auto ML, whatever you want to call it. But those tools don't take into consideration the specific context that you're in. And there's often a lot of tweaking involved before you get to production. This is where you can shine, and I think increasingly this should not be optional. Some other helpful tips. So you probably are familiar with the famous statistic that recruiters only spend 7 seconds on a resume. I don't know how true that is, but I think that's true for articles. There's so much to read online. Like, I find it very difficult to keep up with new really good writing. I have so much bookmarked in my Twitter, in my Google Chrome tab. I have so many Substacks that I subscribe to keep up with the industry. It's really helpful to make your article information dense. Make every sentence count. Don't feel like you have to fill up the word count. Longer doesn't mean better. It's okay to get to the point. It's also really helpful to have lots of visuals that are significant. You want something that can illustrate a core finding that you found, a conclusion, or an assumption that you debunked or validated. Oftentimes people, as they're reading an article, they're kind of jumping back and forth. They're like skimming the top, they skim the bottom, and then they'll look at the visual and be like, okay, I should dig into this a bit more to see how they dealt with this problem. So the visual can often be a really important hook to get them to continue. You also want to include code to demonstrate your technical skills, but I would advise keeping it short, right? Because if people want to replicate your project or dive deeper, they'll look at your GitHub. They'll try it, they'll test it locally. They will hunt for the information themselves. The snippets are to showcase something clever you did. to solve a problem. Like, how did you process this extremely large data set in memory with this cool tool? You can use GitHub gists for this. GitHub gists are great because they exist online on your profile, independent of the article. And then you can copy paste that gist multiple times, like on your own personal website or a Medium article. You'll also want a really strong and descriptive specific title. I got a lot of these examples from articles that I saved. I think these are actual articles that I found. And if you're stuck on how to actually frame it, you could say, again, cookie cutter method, using tool / dataset to build, achieve, improve X. That's it. ChatGPT is also really great for coming up with ideas for how you should best title something. Lots of companies also include their own engineering blogs where you can kind of get a feel for how the industry talks to each other and use the same language to try to demonstrate that you're in the know and you're trying to signal, I guess, higher value writing. So again, these articles seem really boring, but they get to the point, and for the right person, they will not be boring. All right, so I want to talk about the last mile. This part is often neglected because it's just so much work, and I feel like people also get really perfectionist about it. I'm definitely guilty of this. You think, oh my gosh, it's going to take so much time for me to curate a consistent professional brand online. Oftentimes, you find that you take 2 hours, you get the essentials done, and boom, you exist in a professional way. I found it really helpful to get professional feedback on my LinkedIn, my website, or my resume, particularly my resume. If you've never been able to do this, like say from a recruiter, I've been able to ask recruiters at in-person conferences to be like, can you tell me what I should do better about my resume? Like, how does this resume speak to you? Sometimes they will give you good advice right on the spot. But if you can't, try to get someone who's been in a recruiting role or in a managerial role to give you advice, because they can tell you what's missing in a way that a peer can't, because they've seen like hundreds or thousands of these, and they know what is a good signal for skill. On Medium or any other sites that you publish on, I strongly suggest using your own personal website. It doesn't have to be fancy. The pro of having your own website is that you don't have to worry about paywalls like Medium, or say the company goes under and your articles are all taken down. But it doesn't matter. If it's easier for you to get started with a Medium account, do it. On Medium, on GitHub, on all these pages, have a short 2 to 3 sentence bio. Keep it focused on your professional interests and have a way for people to connect with you. On LinkedIn, these are things that I've learned from towards data science and from scanning hundreds, maybe even thousands of LinkedIn profiles by this point. It's really great to talk about, again, current program if you're studying, your previous industry if you're already working, and if relevant, you don't want to confuse people. Invitation to connect, your professional interests. Do not put phrases like data enthusiast, an aspiring data scientist. I've saw many of those, and whether the person was technically proficient or not, it served as a way to signal beginner status, and you don't want to do that. Have a professional photo. I know this gets talked about a lot. You don't need a headshot. Oftentimes the iPhone has now like portrait mode and things like that. Just get your friend to do it something outside with a nice shirt on, professional. Selfies tend to hurt. It's almost better to not have a photo, I feel. And while you want to have a personality, you also don't want to waste space on your profiles. Finally, when you do have this article up, add it everywhere. Add it in your LinkedIn bio, add it in your Medium bio, like add it everywhere you can on Twitter. You've got pin it at the top. Don't hide it. Make it easy for people to find. So in conclusion, I only have a few things. If you leave with nothing else, this is just what I want to leave you with. I don't want to use stress. We all have so much to do nowadays between working full time and having side projects, taking courses, and learning all these new tools that are coming out every day. You really only need one or two articles online to signal professional credibility and get started. Boring and technical is super underrated. It's okay to get to the point. People love it when you do. If you're looking for inspiration, especially if you don't feel like you're a strong writer and want to get better, one way to do it is to read examples of great data science articles and blogs. You can check out Substack's leaderboard for the best Substacks on data science articles. There's a really famous analytics engineering one to check out. Randy Au's Counting Stuff Substack is fantastic for talking through methodologies and assumptions in data science. But there's like a million out there of like really good articles. And if all else fails, just find a company's blog. I think Netflix has a really good corporate blog. Oftentimes, companies curate these blogs as a way to recruit. They want to demonstrate their technical know-how to get the best engineering talent. And so mirroring their style and depth is a way to also grow as a technical person. Existing online is super important for sending a strong professional signal. Get your own website. I host mine on GitHub Pages with Jekyll. It is a more involved way of doing it, but it's free and it's super easy to update. You can do this with WordPress. It honestly doesn't matter. You can use Wix. You don't have to have like the perfect template. Just one article needs to exist with a bio. Fifth, try to get feedback on your articles. If you're stuck or if you're shy to reach out to someone, ChatGPT has been a very good copy editor. And I think Grammarly, the plugin, has been useful too for folks to adjust like tone. So you don't want to sound too formal or informal. You want to find like a sweet spot of talking to your peers in the industry. I'm always available if you want to brainstorm or troubleshoot problems, or even like get over the fear of getting started with a blank page. And I can give you lots of tips on how to do that with ChatGPT. So that's the end of my talk. I want to leave time for questions because I think that's where things can get more generative. And I'm happy to go into more detail too on specific parts that I talked about. I've got lots of examples that I could share as well. But again, I'm very open to collaborating on drafts and helping you out. If you have specific career questions related to technical writing, please book a call with me through Calendly. I think my link is floating around on the mentorship spreadsheet. I didn't know this was a career path until a year ago, and lots of companies are looking for technical writers. So happy to talk about that and other career paths or the companies that I've worked with. And also feel free to connect on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Elliot. The floor is open for everyone who wants to ask questions.
If we have a shy audience, and I'm always the shy person in the talk, like that's totally fine. Just DM me or we just set up a call. That's totally fine too.
Hi, Elliot. This is Archana. Sorry, I'll just.
All good. Hi.
So no, not that shy, but I don't know if it is a relevant question. So I come from an analytical background, but gradually I moved into a managerial position, and I don't really want to go back to coding. But what do you call it? The ask of the time is like, you need to be conversant in talking about MLs and LLMs and their application and use cases. I work in people analytics domain. So we do find a lot of use. And in the past 2 years, I've seen, my company use a lot of new products using ML, and I consult on those projects. So I'm an advisor, basically, and some companies call it execution consultant. So my aim to learn these ML tools and LLMs, codes, is not really to get hands-on on it, but to be able to assist and advise, and also I should be able to audit work. But when you talk about technical writer, I think that's where I see a fit. But and then I don't really get it. Like, do you mean a technical writer has to have a technical skill and then they have to do the writing and make, like, produce content based on their coding skills?
Great question. So I found that I've been able to write intelligently about technical work, even if I'm not an expert in. And oftentimes that's why a company hires one. So I do everything from like blog posts, like for marketing blog posts. The one I wrote for Dagster was fairly low level, right? It's like Python for beginners, to white papers on where companies are trying to sell to other companies, B2B. Lately, I've been doing a lot of technical, like documentation. So going in to test the product, try the library myself, find ways to communicate the features better. And in none of these situations did I need to be as good as a software engineer to contribute. Now it definitely helps to have the technical skills, and I think like that part you cannot like skip over. But the cool part of technical writing is that you get the opportunity to learn as you write, so that you can be a better writer, right? Like you want to talk about the entire stack instead of just that one feature. What that means that you actually have to understand certain concepts. So there's like many ways to get into it. You can start like more gently to the beginner level stuff, or if you feel confident, you can talk about like the practitioner level, which is what companies really love. And there's a surprising shortage of good content for practitioners. So I don't know if that's answers your question.
Is that a technical role, like advisory role? Because I know like a lot of companies now have a role called ML advisor or something, or kind of like a
yeah, I don't think that would be it, because where the writers fit in is they could use the software engineers to talk about what they're shipping, right? But software engineers are very expensive and they don't love to write. They may not even write well, right? So some companies, part of their shipping process is when engineers do create a new feature, they have to add documentation, but the documentation is not great. So you go in and you clean it up. You're like, actually, we could communicate this so much better. And you know what? We could create a whole blog post series on this new feature. So you're thinking like editorial strategy, you're thinking marketing strategy. You're trying to think, how do I add value to the company without just creating SEO optimized, horrible blog posts, right? Like, how do I actually add value here in this industry? Yeah, so it's a very fluid role, and I think it's a huge spectrum of what technical writing can be. But I think really good technical writing adds value to practitioners.
So how do you get into that field? So basically, when you said technical writing, you can start smaller, or you can be really a technical person, and then what the companies like. So if you want to grow gradually, what should be the right way to do it?
So okay, I'll give two scenarios. So one is that, say you're working at a company as an analytics engineer or a software engineer, and you want to try. You could get gigs on the side. You could freelance for other companies as long as they're not in conflict, or you could start writing internally for your company. Oftentimes, the marketing department in a business is under-resourced, and they don't know what to write about. They don't have the technical skills, right? So they're getting ideas from looking at what their competitors are doing. But if you as the software engineer come in like, hey, I see this problem that we face with our clients a lot. This would be a really good blog post to signal that we solved it. and it's not been written well about enough. Like I want to do that for you. It's free work for them. The marketing department is like, oh my gosh, we love you. Please do this for us. And then you get your name out there on the company's blog.
Okay, so
This,
it's
yeah.
basically it's targeting company blogs,
Mhm.
and that's how you get that,
I think that's the easiest
self-marketing.
path. Yeah, that's the easiest path because like
Okay.
company blogs, there's a lot more flexibility as to what you can write about. If you want to do like white papers and stuff for a company, oftentimes maybe they already have a team. There's like a product manager involved, things like that. It's their turf. Blogs are a quicker way to help marketing teams. But if you wanted to do it like as a standalone career, it helps to start building a portfolio. I think that's honestly the only way to do it. You need a portfolio. That's how I got started. And
Okay.
then as you get stronger, you start to demonstrate different skills and people start referring you.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So I don't have to be totally into, moving into a technical ML engineering role, but I can still, kind of do smaller versions of code snippets and then create
Oh
my
yeah.
blog spots. Okay, that I think that
Yes.
is more like me. Uh, I think I wouldn't really want to convert into a full-time engineering role, or just be around the system and sit in one place. More
Oh
like
yeah.
a person who would like to express more, write more or talk more with the
Yeah.
stakeholders. Like, so I think that the third option is a better one for me.
Oh yes. Yes. Absolutely. I'm not the most technical person. My job is like 70% writing, 30% technical. The
Okay.
technical piece is how I continue to stay sharp and
Okay.
understand the product deeply. But I would guess that there are people on this call like way stronger Python coders than me. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's okay. Like you
I
don't,
think the
it's
same.
about comparative advantage.
Right. Thank you. I think that answers my question.
Thanks. That's a great question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Do you mind if I connect with you on LinkedIn, and then if I have
Yes.
any questions, I can just ping you? Okay, thank you.
Yes. I really mean that. I think people don't take advantage of invitations to connect enough online. And many of my career referrals have come from just coffee chats on Zoom. People remember you. They think, oh, that guy, he was looking for a job in this industry. I'll tell him about this internal posting. That actually happened to me a month ago. So like, I strongly recommend everyone on this call, like, this is an underutilized resource to have coffee chats with people online.
Yeah, that's a good advice for everyone. I get. Thank you.
Welcome. Are there any other questions?
Yes, there are questions. There's some in the chat.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I will look at the chat. Okay, so the question on a generic blogging site or build your own website. Yeah, great question. So I would say do whatever is a lower barrier to getting it started. It took me 2 years to get my website up because I kept thinking, oh, like I need to like pick the perfect template and I need to figure out my file, like my website structure, and I need to have a proper headshot and all these things. And then when I finally did it, it like took me like an afternoon to get up. And obviously, like since then, I've been iterating on it and adding to it every day. But whatever you think you can get up in an afternoon is the best path because you can always upgrade later on. But it's better to have like a link now to start adding and handing out to people. I've also noticed that in a lot of company like application forms, they have now added like, oh, do you have your own website to add to the link in addition to your GitHub repo, your LinkedIn profile, and your Twitter profile. So recruiters are definitely like looking through these things to see get a sense of who are you beyond the one-page resume and cover letter, right? It's a holistic view of how you operate. Yeah, so I hope I answered that question. But yeah, use GitHub Pages because it's free and it links to your GitHub. Oh, yes. Okay, so the question by Matt on transitioning to a path towards DevRel. Yes, that is a great question. And I can speak to that now because in the last month I've been interviewing for DevRel positions. I've turned them down because ultimately they weren't the right fit for me. But in hindsight, a lot of the skills that a technical writer uses overlaps with developer relations. So for those of you who don't know, developer relations is like jobs like developer advocates. They're very public, right? They're the ones maybe shaping the blog content. They're doing talks. They're posting on LinkedIn about the company's products, specifically for other developers. And so they demonstrate all the skills that a technical writer needs, except they need to be public facing as well. And I think as a technical writer, you can choose the degree to which you want to be the face of the company. Like some stuff I ghostwrite, my name is not attached to it. Oftentimes there'll be white papers and stuff. Uh, blog posts, sometimes my name will be on it, sometimes not. Documentation, definitely like your name will be on it in any way. So you can be pretty like quiet underneath the surface. Or if you like tweeting and talking to an audience and you're not shy to speak to folks in person or online, like absolutely this would build your portfolio towards developer relations. And then if you're more ambitious, you can create like a newsletter with some consistency to build a readership. And companies sometimes like to see that, oh, you've built an audience and we want your audience. We want to bring you in-house. So yeah, so that would be my 2 cents on that career path. I hope that's useful, but please feel free to have any follow-up questions. If anyone's looking for a developer relations role, Kestra is hiring right now. If you know Kestra, it's a data orchestration company, and they have one of the industry's best technical writers there. Her name is Anna Geller. She's written a lot online the last few years. She's now a product manager there.
There is a question in the Q&A.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you have access to it, or I just read it?
Oh yeah, I don't have access to it. Would you mind reading it?
Okay, it says, do you ever get negative feedback when you message someone with a link to an article you have written? I am concerned it would come off as entitled because the person might feel you are giving them work to do.
That's interesting. Okay. I personally have not had a bad reaction. The most common reaction is silence, right? Like it's in your spam folder. They don't have time to respond to you, or they're not interested, or they're too shy to. Quite frankly, like a lot of us are shy to talk to people online. So to give people the benefit of doubt, they don't know how to help you. The second part of the question, talking about the possibility of coming off as entitled. I think it depends how you phrase things, right? Like it comes across in your tone. Do you demonstrate like humility? It's not that you're saying, hey, I need you to read this. It's by the way, like I've actually done my homework. I don't want to waste your time in a call. I'm not asking you about basics. And there might be mutual benefit here to us talking. That I think that's what that's the kind of signal that it is sending to other people. And it's giving people a chance to say yes to you with more information than just a LinkedIn request. So many of us get like spam that we don't know what's a legitimate request and what's not legitimate, you know? So having a actual crafted message that's not, please, can we have a call? Please, can you refer me? Should increase your success rate to some degree.
Okay, so the question is answered.
Yes, thanks for that. Any other questions or ways I can help folks?
Do you have any more questions?
Thanks, dear Elliot.
Hi, is it Aaron?
Yes, I'm Aaron. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. I would like to give you some questions if you may.
Sure.
I would like to ask you questions about connecting academy to industry, how to be flexible and connect your research to industrial research in data science, especially in the field of artificial intelligence and cross-disciplinary artificial intelligence specifications.
Great question. So I'm assuming that you're asking, like, say you've done a very specific project in the past, maybe more theoretical even.
Exactly.
How do you sell that to industry when you're applying?
Or how do you tailor both your theory, yes, to the industry? Exactly.
Okay. I'm thinking like the easiest way to do that is so when you're applying to a job, right? The employer's trying to figure out two things. The first thing is, do you actually know the domain that you're applying to in this specific industry, like say healthcare, AI
Yes,
healthcare specifically, right?
AI bioinformatics, AI chem informatics. I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry and master's. I'm doing my master's in computer and information science, but I'm interested in doing artificial intelligence PhD. So
Okay.
I would like to not just specify in one niche thing and go right into academy and get far from industry. I would like to get to know both businesses, both industries, both fields very well, both academy and industry.
Okay.
Uh,
So are you like in the context of writing there, are you thinking like how do you combine that
Yes,
in
how
like
how
okay,
how can I be smart and flexible to
yeah.
not lose my interest while doing my research at the academy, and also be flexible enough to be able to sell that research to the industry and
Mm,
find tailored customers to my research.
okay. I have two thoughts. So the first is that it never hurts to go deep. And like if you are very strong academically and theoretically, um, that is probably the edge that you'll have over other candidates for the same job. So definitely like
Mhm,
continue to embrace that. Don't like, fear that it'll hurt your industry chances. But the way
mhm,
you then sell yourself to industry will have to look very different, right? You can't send them a PDF of your research articles that you've done in undergrad, like your thesis papers, for example. Um, a lot of times they won't have time to understand why this finding translates to their bottom line. Um,
mhm,
so in again, like in the constraints of 1,000 word article or even less, 1,000 word blog post,
mhm,
you want to signal domain knowledge, right? Like you're in bioinformatics and you want to get into bioinformatics, for example, like absolutely signal that you have this information and knowledge down cold, right? You're
mhm,
not just
mhm.
some newbie trying to break in. You did lots of
Understood.
school for this, right?
Understood.
So this could be in the like the introduction section of the article, right?
Mhm, mhm,
You signal all the domain context specific stuff you need to know. And
mhm,
then in the methodology section, also that comes into play again. And that's where you can really show that you thought of all the edge cases that someone without context would not think about if they were trying it for the first time. Um, yeah, I think like I don't think it should be a constraint in that way. It should only make you better. The question
mhm,
then is
mhm. Exactly.
how you sell it, right? Like,
Yes, yes.
yeah, it's got to be a
Uh,
tight article. Yeah.
because it sometimes bothers me that so recently I noticed that it's been 8 years that I have been considering getting a PhD because I'm 23 years old. So just a year
Okay.
ago, I finished my bachelor's and currently I'm doing my master's. And it's been 8 years since I was wondering, should I go deep into science or should I just stay tailored to my country local industry, but I'm and it seems like I'm losing my fear to lose boundaries, become limitless, and become
Mm.
and do my PhD abroad. So, of course, I would like to thank you. That was very, very, very informative. That one should never hold back if has a niche understanding of a field and wants to break in. And especially when you have done a lot of time research on like chemistry and now you're doing AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And may I ask you for also advice about cross-disciplinary professions and sciences according to AI, like bioinformatics and AI, chemistry and AI? How is the industry responding to this cross-disciplinary developments of professions?
Wow. Okay. I definitely can't speak to that specifically, but I can speak to it on a general career advice level. So I've realized that the industry is actually quite small, and it's hard to find talent, which is hard. It's difficult to understand this when you're applying to jobs with like 1,000 applicants, right? And you're like, why am I not getting through the interviews? Why am I not getting the job? Like, I'm a good candidate. It's hard to find people who have a specific combination of skills that a company needs at a point in time. And the way to increase your chances of that is to work on those, say, 3 skills. You only need like 3 skills to be really above average at your job. So communicating is will help you in any job for sure. If you're a strong writer and speaker, whether you're a salesperson or as an engineer, it will give you an edge. The technical depth, like, are you continuing to learn on the job? Like, I know that a lot of technical work, like even if you've landed like a dream job as an engineer, oftentimes projects take a long time to get started, or it fails, it flops, or it gets
Exactly.
canceled, and you don't have anything actually to talk about.
Yes.
Right? And we hear a lot about remote jobs where you're only working like 4 hours a day, nothing's happening. Right? So if you're in one of those situations, could you do a side project to keep up? And you don't need to do a lot. You just need one really. Learn the latest tool. In data, a really good tool to learn right now is DBT, and there are free courses online to get started. Build your own like full stack project, become like a full stack data scientist. It's much easier now with tools like ChatGPT to help you learn faster. Yeah, so you have your communication skills and your technical skills, and then the third piece is like the specific domain knowledge that you have. So then if you have those 3 things, like all of a sudden you're very attractive to an employer, right? And they can understand
Yes.
your skill set very clearly.
And may I ask this,
Yeah.
Elliot? I would like to know if how do you respond to this idea? Trying to build a career starting from somewhere where it is not very competitive and build your way up to more competitive organizations.
Yeah.
It's kind of similar to the question, is it better to start at a small company or already a
Oh
large
yeah.
company? But I would like to know, how do you respond to this? Starting your
Uh,
career, your PhD, you're started at somewhere where there is not much competition, and you can also take your time to build some professional skills.
yeah. Very good question. I think it boils down to which is the job where you can get mentorship at. And I say this because I have experience with in roles where I had really bad mentorship or no mentorship. And I found that many of those cases it capped my opportunity to grow. So if you can think of it from like a coding perspective, how do you become a better coder? You could read blogs and courses and stuff, but it only gets you so far. And watching, even having the opportunity to watch a really good engineer at a company work through a
Yes,
problem
exactly.
is like worth more than anything else, right? Like it's worth more than any course you could find, any boot camp you could find. And I've like every time that's happened to me, I'm like, oh my God, like I need to learn from this person. I need this person to be my boss. I need to be on this team. I need to be in that company. So I've been very conflicted, kind of like you, on big company or startups. I've only had the opportunity to work at startups for reasons. But as I've grown through the roles, what I've come to prioritize is the boss, who the boss is. Will they mentor you? Is
Yes.
there a path for
Yes.
growth? And are there other people in the company that I can learn from if, say, my boss is unavailable?
Yes. So you have also developed a very good skill of being able to get your thoughts through even when your boss is not available. Like being able to communicate virtually via email,
Yeah.
even if you don't have the chance of doing a face-to-face meeting. It was very informative. I hadn't considered that watching a senior developer engineer work looks like worse than a course that you can take. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I realize this as someone who's only worked remote as well, right? So like there's an additional
Yeah.
barrier if you're not
Yes.
actively talking to people in Slack channels and you
Yes.
can't walk by someone's desk and be like, hey, what you working on? Can I get your thoughts on something? Um, Finding someone who's willing to screen share as they work through something and show you how things can be done better. I'll give
Oh,
you guys a super simple example. It's kind of trivial even. I was screen sharing and this engineer was watching me, like guiding me through a task. And I was just doing a git commit, right, to create a pull request. And I think I couldn't figure out like what all the commits I had going on. And he was like, oh, just do git status, right? Because he could see me struggling. And I was like, git status, I don't know
yes.
what git status is. I was like, oh, it's so basic, right? Man, this is embarrassing. But just like that, I learned something new.
Exactly.
And I would never have stumbled on that if, as a best practice in a workflow, if an engineer hadn't been watching me. And so after the call, he said, because I said to him, like, I need to learn better coding best practices, like, and I don't want to keep learning from books because it's not helpful. He said, okay, we'll pair program and you can watch me.
Oh, that's
Yeah, so I
very
think finding that person at an organization who's not shy about that and is willing to take you on, it could be your boss, it could be a colleague, like that beats whether it's a big company or a small company.
yes, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. So most of the people who had advised me to get into research after working for a while uh, in the industry is
Mhm.
because when you're doing research, you may not have the professional technical skills of writing the clean code, and maybe the code for the research is not as clean as you would stumble upon it
Yeah.
in the industry. So industry teaches clean code, and that will help if I am to help another person who is new to research.
Mhm.
Screen
Mhm.
sharing, screen sharing, and showing how everything is done by
Oh
my
yeah.
own experience. That was a good point. That was a very good point.
Oh, I'm happy to pass this on because I feel like I am learning all of this accidentally at times. I'm like, oh, right, of course. This is not obvious to me. And I faced some disadvantages. Like, for example, I live in a small city that has no
Me
tech
too.
industry. There you go,
Me too.
right? And I for personal reasons, I can't move. And I've been worried about, does that limit my potential in tech?
Oh,
Um, right? You worry about that, right? If you're in a
yes,
different country.
exactly. A lot.
Yeah. So then you think, okay, what is your goal here? Whatever job you're in, is that you want to learn X, Y, Z, You want to form
Yes.
relationships with colleagues because those are important networking relationships as you proceed in your career. Which company can best help you achieve those goals? Is it like
Mhm.
sometimes you can get a really nice job at like say Facebook, it pays really well. Maybe
Mhm.
that's a bad example. Like a prestigious job, right? Versus a job where you know the team, you know the working culture, and you know they'll help you grow. It's almost always better to go with the team and culture over the shiny, prestigious job where it's like you might be kind of left on your own for 7 hours a day, and then with no portfolio to speak of at the end of it.
And I would not like it's a very good point, and I would like to ask this in advance. How do you identify a toxic environment when you're working remotely at a
Yeah,
workspace?
that's been really tough for me because I've gotten stuck a few times. Yeah, because you cannot really identify these things in an interview
Yes,
process. Like you can ask them questions and they can say all the right things.
especially in the
Yeah,
competitive market, in the competitive industry, or a company that is very competitive and large.
yeah. I think it helps if you could talk to the person who left. Like, why did they leave? Is it for a better offer?
Yeah.
If that, then okay. You could talk to other people on the team to get a sense of things, but even then, they may not be willing to disclose if they're struggling to. I found a way to do this kind of accidentally because of my freelancing, I work for multiple companies and they all work very differently. Um, but I've been able to kind of test drive them out before I do more work. And actually, one of the companies that uh, I will be joining full time next week, I chose
Mhm.
because for a month I got to observe how they work and do I like them,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
and how will I be treated, you know? So I don't know. That's not like a typical way to do it, but if you are in a
And may
position
I
where you
ask
are freelancing, yeah,
what were the things that caught your eye in terms of their working skills,
yeah.
teamwork?
Well, for me specifically, my strength is not technical. I am first and foremost social science writer, right? I'm learning tech to get into tech. But so for me, the things I looked for were, are the engineers nice to talk to, right? Are they
Mhm.
scary? Do they like, does it, when I talk to them, does it feel like I'm wasting their time? You know,
Mhm.
are they
Mhm.
taking the time to explain basic things to me, like the Git status example, right? Um, how can I see what they're working on in some capacity, whether live through a call, or they're keeping me updated. Um, and recently, I've found that being direct about your concerns actually gets you better answers. So because in the past, I used to be kind of afraid of being very honest about my fears, because it may signal that, oh, I'm not very strong about this. But I've been like,
Mhm.
you know what? I don't want to be in a bad situation again. So let me be direct
Mhm.
with you. And I said, um, one of the things I'm worried about working in a remote company is that I will get lost, right? If you don't talk in the channels, you disappear. And I'm shy. Like I don't love to talk all day in public channels about stuff or ask for help.
Mhm.
How would you help me? What is the culture here? And then they would say, "Oh, I totally understand. I'm very approachable. I send memes to my colleagues all day, um, stuff like that." And you go like, "Oh, okay. So like, it's not stuffy in here, strangers to each other. It's actually kind of friendly." And now they know that I'm shy. They'll make more of an effort to help me out.
It's as I talk to you, it's such a pleasure, and I admire every single insight you give. I would like to address this very precise part of your speech, that you are a social scientist and you are
Yeah,
trying to get into tech.
yeah,
And currently it is very, very important the human-computer interaction sciences are very important and are developing at a very good speed. And I myself, I'm very communicative. I love communicating, and for me, if I only work by myself, I love theory, I love science. Getting to know every single bit of it gives me such a joy. But not working with people, not seeing people, it affects me, and it doesn't affect me in
Yeah.
any good way. So I
Yeah.
always need to communicate in my workplace and
Yeah.
my educational system. May I ask how this trend can be used, communication, and not as an engineer, but a combination of those two would be magnificent. Combining social skills and science and computer science. Would you please talk further about this subject?
Yeah. Oh, like the combination of skills. Um,
And also
I've been, yeah.
and also how one can put it into good use, maybe do something new with it.
Mm,
Not just about communicating and networking, which is hugely impacting one's professional life, but also maybe some of us have very good social skills and are
mhm,
trying to
mhm.
force ourselves to get into tech and do technical
Yeah.
stuff, but we shouldn't ignore our strengths either.
Great. No, great question. I will say that I always try to sell writing to technical folks because I know that technical folks don't like to write. But the best engineers are very strong writers. And
Mhm.
you see this in companies and you also see it online. Like some of the most influential like CEOs are technical founders, right? And they are able
Exactly.
to be project their charisma online. Uh, one of the companies I work for, they have a Twitter account, they have a marketing team that handles it. They push blog posts. The tweets that do the best are the ones where the CEO starts to say, here are the 10 best practices on database principles that I think are unpopular, but I believe in. And he goes into like super technical detail. Like, it's like, whoa, where did this come from, right? This is like information that's not easy to get, and a CEO is talking directly to people about. So definitely don't underestimate the value of like being great at both. Um, and in terms of like getting better, I find that like it's kind of like any other skills, like you gotta practice. So now that COVID is largely over, try to go to in-person conferences. And speaking specifically to like you and I, where we are in smaller cities, it sounds like where there's not a tech hub. If
Yes.
possible, go to the closest city where there is one, right? Whether it's
Mhm.
for a day trip or something, go to that conference, get a sense of like what the people are like, make friends in the industry. Um,
Mhm.
and even if it's not, you don't feel like it's a meaningful connection, just add them on LinkedIn. They'll be posting things about jobs and stuff that might be relevant to you one day.
Mhm.
Um, and it's a good way to practice pitching yourself over and over again to strangers, right? Every new connection you make, you have to talk about the same thing: who you are, what you studied, and where do you want to go. And learning how to be curious about another person. Yeah, you can do this online too. But I just find that like you got to have that balance, and especially like if you're in a smaller city with no tech hub, it like really pays to like go out once in a while to another city. Yeah, I hope that's helpful. I'm trying to keep
Very
my
happy.
answers as broadly applicable as possible,
Yes, yes, yes.
whatever,
Very
yeah,
good.
industry. Yeah,
I do live in a city which is trying to become a tech hub, but isn't currently. So it, it was a very good point trying to travel around and see other people in different cities. Um,
yeah,
Thank you very much for your responses, for your reply, for your answers, also explanations. They were very precise and generalized, and also they were very niche answers. I highly admire your enthusiasm for this kind of work that you did today. Thank you very much.
You know,
It meant a
I
lot.
appreciate your kind words very much, and there's been great questions from the audience. And yeah, I just hope to give back in some way that, you know, many people have helped me out with. So yeah, definitely like you're doing the right thing by being here. Um, and there can only be exciting things ahead
Yes,
in tech.
exactly.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? I don't want to take up too much time. Let's see. Okay. All right. So we have 15 minutes left. Yeah, again, if you're too shy to ask a question in a group, feel free to just book a call and we can get into it.